about this question. Is there a reason you're worshiping here today? If you have a reason for being in worship here today, online or in person, I'd like you to raise your hand. Many years ago, I was asked to do a funeral for the sister of someone in the church I served. I had met her many times. She lived in the Joplin area, and she'd been coming to church services fairly regularly for the past few months when she was in town visiting her sister, I assumed. I thought she must be going through something in her life for her to be leaving Joplin and coming to the Springfield area so many weekends. That's the assumption I made. When she died suddenly and the family asked me to come to Joplin to be with them all, I said, well, I don't want to get in anybody's way. Where does she go to church? Who is her pastor? And her brother-in-law said, our church, Kim. She goes to our church. And you're her pastor. I'd made an assumption. He told me something had been going on in her life, which is why she came to visit her sister one weekend and came along to church. But then she was coming to church on the weekends and seeing her sister from that point on. And I missed it because I dismissed her as someone that was just coming, a bring-along, family bring-along, right? Because family members do that. They kind of blend into the crowd. We make the assumption that they're not here to be with us. They're here just because they're in town. But actually, they're here for a reason just like you are. I was at my license renewal interview this week with the district. I passed for the 19th time, is some kind of record. And the people on my committee asked me who our online people are. You know, we're all in UMCs are in connection. We're not in competition. But I will say, when they realize that people don't have to live in Marshfield to be active disciples at Marshfield United Methodist Church, it does give some of them a bit of the horror. They're like, when did you move into our town? Because sometimes when I list the places that our online people come from, they're like the towns they have churches in, and it feels a little weird to them. You all are getting kind of famous for that in Missouri UMC circles because they just keep bringing it up to me. What are you guys doing? And I said that we don't know who some of the online people are yet because they haven't all revealed themselves, and they come and they reveal themselves, and then new people come and we don't know them yet. But a lot of them are people who came to worship with their family or friends, and they liked how church felt at our place. So when they went home to Bartlesville, Oklahoma, or Lee's Summit, or Cedar Hill, or Columbia, Missouri, or Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, they kept worshiping with us because we made it easy for them to do so, and we made it clear that when they were here, that we saw them as people who mattered, and we didn't dismiss them as, oh, that's just somebody's family member who's never going to come back, or lose them in the crowd. And every time I say this to a group of pastors, because they always ask me what we're up to, what's Marshfield up to, you can see the realization hit them that they have people like that too, but they hadn't tried to connect with them yet. You know, they just thought of them as sort of family bring-alongs. Because churches do that. People walk in and they're like, do I need to pay attention to that person? No, I've got a pretty good excuse why they're not my issue. I took a vacation the 2 weeks before I was to become your pastor, and I had one goal, and that was to find my parents a church where I could leave them in Springfield safely under the care of a pastor, and I could come be here and be your pastor and not be their pastor. So I took them to a church I thought they'd like because I knew that church and I liked that pastor. And let me just say, we went there and they did not bother us at all. They didn't talk to us at all. They didn't see us at all. And the only people my parents met that day were two pastors. One was the pastor of the church, and one was a retired pastor who was there because he needed a faith community in his retirement, and it was his first Sunday there, and no one was talking to him or looking at him either. So I just, I got more confidence than sense. So I just walked up and I was like, "Hey, buddy, here, meet my parents." And so I did all the introducing. I think that's another word, introducing, that day. I did all of that day. And I didn't need that church to see me because, it would have been nice, right, if somebody had said, "Hey, welcome." But I needed them to see my parents, and I needed them to see my newly retired colleague because I wanted them to have a community of faith, right? I wanted them to have a church family. I was just there to worship and hear a sermon I didn't write. But everyone who came with me needed something. They needed a place to worship Jesus in community. And as we walked out of the church that day, my mom said, I will never forget it, "Well, they all seem to really like each other." Today we celebrate Palm Sunday, which is about the crowd in Jerusalem recognizing who Jesus was at his entrance. They had heard stories about Jesus, the word was out, and now they were getting to see him when they were all in town for Passover. Pontius Pilate is showing up to keep things under control at one gate of the city. Jesus comes in at the opposite gate. Pilate comes in on a war horse. Jesus comes in on a donkey. Pontius Pilate represents the power and authority and oppression of Rome. And the juxtaposition between Rome and Jesus works for Jesus that day. Jesus is their boy today, and they are celebrating him for this moment because they will turn. The crowd will turn on him later this week. That's a story we hear every year. So today on Palm Sunday, after reminding you of that one, I want to tell you a different story of a crowd around Jesus. Let's hear it again, but I want to back it up a little bit because this gem of a story is buried inside another related story, and I want you to get that greater context. So we're going to back up to verse 40 of Luke 8, so just listen. Now, when Jesus returned, a crowd welcomed him, for they were expecting him. Then a man named Jairus, a synagogue leader, came and fell at Jesus' feet, pleading with him to come to his house because his only daughter, a girl of about 12, was dying. As Jesus was on his way, the crowds almost crushed him. And a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years, but no one could heal her. She came up behind him and touched the edge of his cloak, and immediately her bleeding stopped. "Who touched me?" Jesus asked. And when they all denied it, Peter said, "Master, the people are crowding and pressing against you." But Jesus says, "Someone touched me. I know that power has gone out from me." Then the woman, seeing that she could not go unnoticed, came trembling and fell at his feet. And in the presence of all the people, she told why she had touched him and how she had been instantly healed. Then he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace." And while Jesus was still speaking, someone came from the house of Jairus, the synagogue leader. "Your daughter is dead," he said. "Don't bother the teacher anymore." Hearing this, Jesus said to Jairus, "Don't be afraid. Just believe, and she will be healed." So that's story within a story. There's two people who've come to the crowd looking for Jesus. Jairus, a synagogue leader This is not someone who hung out with Jesus. He comes up to Jesus, bold as brass, because his 12-year-old daughter is dying. And he has decided to ask for Jesus' help. But while Jesus is dealing with this important issue, a woman with also 12 years of health problems no one can solve, lost in the crowd, reaches out and touches the edge of his cloak, and she's healed. Jairus was a religious leader. He's got more confidence than sense. He was okay being seen. That woman did not want to be seen. Verse 47 tells us she came forward seeing that she could not go unnoticed, right? But whether they were comfortable being seen or wanted to not be seen, they had something in common. They showed up in a crowd worshiping Jesus because they needed Jesus to heal them. They needed Jesus to tell them not to be afraid anymore. So they both showed up in this crowd that was so many people, it was almost crushing him. They both showed up because they needed Jesus more than they needed to remain unseen or keep their religious leader reputation or stay by the side of their dying daughter. They needed Jesus. That's why they showed up. I've spent 20 years meeting first time, second time, and third time guests to the churches I've served, and I am usually the one who gets their story out of them eventually about how they found the church. And none of those stories have ever gone like this. I woke up one morning, decided I'd be a good person and go to church, and yours was closest. No big deal. That's not how it goes. Here's what I've heard. I parked in the parking lot for 2 weeks while you had church because I could not make myself go in the door and find out if you wanted me. But I'm glad I finally walked in. And we watched online for months waiting to see if you would tell us what terrible people we are. And then we decided to come see if you are all as nice as you seem on the camera. And you are, so we're in. And, you know, we're done attending church. We were done. We've tried so many churches, and you're there for 6 months, and then everything takes a bad turn. But one day we just felt this strange feeling that we needed to go, and we both thought we needed to go to this church. It was like we were being pulled here separately, and we both had the sense. And so we came to church here, and a few weeks later, our child got a terrible health diagnosis, and you all just wrapped us up in love. So do you think God pushed us both to want to start church then so that we would have the support network we needed to get through what was coming? And I said yes. And this one came to me this year. I was sitting at a family Christmas Eve party. I had lots to do. And I suddenly had this strong urge to look on Facebook and see when your church was having Christmas Eve service. And I felt like I had to go. I did not have a choice. So I left everyone else at home celebrating, and I came to your church just to find out God gave you a sermon that was written for me. It was exactly what I needed to convict me to turn away from the road I was heading down. Isn't God great? But it's very easy when we're gathered as a crowd, when we're clamoring for the help we need or celebrating the one who gives it for people we don't know, we don't recognize, they don't even go here, to get lost in the crowd. Some of them want to be seen. Some people show up, but they don't want to be seen, at least not at first. But it took some vulnerability for anyone to show up in a group of people who already hang out together, right? It takes a lot of vulnerability to walk in and be the new person, whether you're tuning in online or coming in person. But everybody who tunes in or shows up in person does so for a reason. No one tunes in or walks in here for the first time for no reason at all. I just felt like it today. That doesn't happen. They have a reason, and it is usually that they need Jesus. They need Jesus for healing. They need Jesus for what's about to come in their way, or to turn them around, or to remind them that they're safe and loved, or to comfort them in their pain and grief, or to remind them that they are not alone in the world, or to tell them not to be afraid. They need Jesus to stop shoving them so hard so they show up. They need Jesus to save them. The people of Jerusalem shouted, "Hosanna, save us now." They needed something from Jesus. That's why they were there. The woman with the health issue needed Jesus to heal her when no doctor could. Jairus needed Jesus to breathe life into his daughter. And unless your family has been here for many generations, which some of you have, each of you needed something from Jesus, something of Jesus, when you got the nerve to walk in the doors or tune in online for the first time. You may not even know why you needed Jesus, but Jesus pushed you here to get him. And most of you who have stuck around, you have a story of how you got what you needed from Jesus, and it usually involves another person who was here or is here now, because we are his hands and feet. Jesus does not hug our new folks. Joanne Warman does. Jesus doesn't shake people's hands like he can't breathe if he doesn't know you. Kurt Modesher does. Jesus doesn't help you find your best Sunday school class. Deb Drain does. Jesus doesn't help you find your next Bible study. Deanne Rader does. Jesus doesn't rock your baby in the nursery. Connie Hutchins does. Jesus doesn't greet you online. Damon Kamsler and Sharon Day and Hunter Erb and a whole long list of people do. It's okay, Walter. Jesus doesn't make you laugh on Sunday by telling you if he was any better, he'd need to be medicated. Joe Boy does. And all of these people, right? And so many more of you that I don't have time to name, you do those things because you're here for a reason. Because of Jesus. You do those things for Jesus. You don't let people get lost in the crowd. You shake hands and you direct and you smile and you introduce and catch names and crack gentle jokes because you realize Jesus isn't here in a form in which he can do that. You're the form. You're the body of Christ. You're the form in which he can do it. So not only are you here because you need Jesus, but also because Jesus needs you as his front line of welcome. Welcome to the kingdom. Welcome to the church. It makes a difference. People are going to show up to worship, and they have a very good reason, even if they won't tell you what it is. They're here because they need Jesus. They will get what they need. But I think the question every church needs to ask themselves is, will people get what they need from Jesus here because of us or despite us? With us or around us? Every Sunday, we get whatever crowd we get, online and in person. I can't control it. I can't make Jan come every Sunday. Jan, every Sunday. I say that because Jan comes every Sunday. Okay. We get whatever crowd we get, online and in person. But I'll tell you, those are the people Jesus sent. Those are the people that have a reason to be in worship with us. Are you here for a reason? Do you need Jesus? Jesus is what I need today. Jesus is what you need today. Jesus has what you need. And you're here for a reason. Because you need Jesus, because Jesus needs you here. Amen.